started. Thanks, Beth. Yeah, so I wanted to mention, first of all, that we'll be recording this session so that we can share it on our website. It can serve as a resource for you as you work on your grant application. If you have questions, you can go back and reference it. And it'll be available to people who weren't able to attend today as well. So hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Kersey. I am the Vermont Early Childhood Fund Grants Manager at Building Bright Futures, and I am excited to share information about the next round of funding through the Vermont Early Childhood Fund. Today, we will give a brief introduction to Building Bright Futures, review the history of the Vermont Early Childhood Fund and its growth through the federal Vermont Integration Project Birth to 5, also known as a preschool development grant. We'll cover the grant timeline and the grant programs that we'll be offering this round, explain the review process, and show you a few things on our website as well as one of the grant portals. We'll provide some time at the end for questions, but please feel free to type any questions you have into the chat during the presentation, and we'll try to address them as they come up. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth Truzansky, Building Bright Futures Deputy Director, who will get us started today.
Hello. It's great to be here with you today. It is our practice to start with a mindful moment. So before we go into some of the background around BBF and the Vermont Early Childhood Fund, I invite you to take a moment and not multitask for just 60 seconds. Let's see if we can do this, myself included. If you'd like to turn off your screen, you may. We're going to do some volcano breathing. Where I'm standing, or if you're seated, put your feet solidly on the floor and sit up upright in your chair. And you're going to start with your hands at your chest and take a deep breath in and out. And then the next one, when you take in, you're going to squirt the volcano up and into the air and exhale. We'll try that again. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, squirt, exhale, back down. You can do that one more time by yourself and turn your screens on again if you would like as we move on. Thank you. Okay. Michelle, do you want to pull up the screens and I will give a little bit of background. So again, my name is Beth Truzansky. I'm the Deputy Director of Building Bright Futures. I'm thrilled to be talking about this next round of Vermont Early Childhood Fund applications. Just really briefly, Building Bright Futures was established in state statute as Vermont's Early Childhood State Advisory Council and Network. And this is the primary mechanism we use to advise the governor and the legislature and our agency partners on the well-being of children and families from the prenatal period through age 8. Our mission is to improve the well-being of children and families in Vermont by using evidence and data to inform policy and bringing voices together across sectors and within regions to discuss critical challenges and problem solve. It's through the Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan that BBF maintains this vision for Vermont's early childhood system. Which is an integrated continuum of comprehensive, high quality services that are established, accessible, that are equitable and accessible and improve outcomes for each and every child from the prenatal period through age 8. So we accomplish this through a range of ways. We have a network, what we call the network, which is includes the regional councils, our VCAP committees, and the State Advisory Council. So that's a little bit of a background around BBF. Many of you are partners and know that. It's a good reminder. We established the Vermont Early Childhood Fund in 2021, thanks to a contribution from a generous private donor, and that really allowed us to kind of pilot the Vermont Early Childhood Fund, and the funding was renewed in 2022 and 23. And it was created to invest in regional creative solutions for gaps and needs identified through the BBF network. Primarily the regional councils at the time. And then we were given an incredible opportunity to expand Vermont Early Childhood Fund through the Preschool Development Grant. And this is a federal grant we received in 2019 to support systems improvements. But unlike prior rounds, we were actually able to provide a considerable amount of that grant out to support community efforts. So we are using, so the following preschool development renewal grant in 2022, we call the Vermont Integration Project, Building Integration in Vermont's B5 Early Childhood System, or VIBP-B5. And this grant includes funding, again, to provide some direct services to local programs, and using VECF as kind of the mechanism to do that. So in total, this grant is a 3-year grant, and we have approximately $6 million in subgrants that will go out to Vermont over the next few years. Very exciting opportunity. So in the first round of grants that we ran in the fall, this fall, we awarded 1.2 million, essentially the first 1.2 million to 19 organizations. And just briefly, some of the organizations and projects that were selected to through this grant round. So we, as you know, we have 2 different kind of types of grants, the innovation grants. One is going to pilot a project in Franklin County that will increase timely access to developmental assessments and coordination of support services for children with developmental differences. And the other innovation grant is creating a community orientation program in Chittenden County to help Spanish-speaking migrant families access critical services, connect with other families, and increase family engagement and current systems. We have a whole range of opportunity grants. I'll just give you a few of those examples. One of those is providing support groups to families with children either currently or previously in the neonatal intensive care unit. Another grant is going to support music enrichment in early childhood education programs. We have a couple of grants supporting developing workforce through classes and trainings. One is specific for high school students. Another one is specific for new Americans interested in entering the early childhood field. There's also some grants that are supporting current ECE professionals in accessing services like trainings like multi-tiered systems of support, universal design for learning, equity, diversity and inclusion, attachment, relationship-based caregiving, and child needs. So some workforce focused grants. We are helping the grants that were awarded in the fall are helping 6 organizations located throughout Vermont to create more than 230 childcare and early ed slots. Pretty cool. All of this information is on the website, and this is a map that we have that just indicates some of the geographic distribution of those grants. So it's a pretty incredible opportunity. It also kind of comes on the heels of some of the ARPA and stabilization grants. And this funding in particular is quite a bit more broad to address gaps in our system. So just really thrilled that the federal money is able to go out to communities. We know it is not simple or straightforward managing federal grants, but trying to do our best to make that happen. So I'm going to hand this back to Michelle, and she'll talk about the program.
Thanks, Beth. The application portal for both grant programs opened on Monday, and you can access them through the Vermont Early Childhood Fund page on our website, which I'll show you a little bit later. The portal will be open for 5 weeks and will close at 5 p.m. on Friday, March 22nd. It's important to make sure that you get your application in by the deadline because we won't be accepting late applications. We'll be holding 4 virtual question and answer sessions. And these sessions are really intended for you to be able to just show up, almost like office hours at school, where you can show up and ask your questions and have them answered. Opportunity for you to learn from other applicants, the kinds of questions they're asking. You can register for those sessions on our website. Award notifications will be made in May, and the grant period is from July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. So it's important to be aware of that grant period because expenses that occur outside of the grant period cannot be reimbursed. And this is a really important thing to know as well, because these are funds that are coming from the federal government. These are reimbursement-based grants. And so payments will be made on a monthly basis to grantees, where grantees submit an invoice using a template provided by Building Bright Futures for their expenses, as well as supporting documents. And then once award notifications are made, we will work with grantees to project when they'll need funding over the course of the year so that we can quickly get funds out the door to them. I do like to mention, we understand at Building Bright Futures that a reimbursement basis is not an ideal system of grant making. That can be an obstacle for organizations. So if that's an obstacle for your organization, if you could just reach out to me by email and let me know, that would be great, because this is something we're tracking. So just like in the fall, we'll be offering 2 grant programs, the Opportunity Grant and the Innovation Grant. Details about both programs, as well as downloadable copies of the application questions, a budget template, a list of frequently asked questions, all of that can be found on our website. If you applied in the fall, please note that the application has had some changes, incorporating suggestions from both grantees and reviewers. So you can certainly reapply again, but you'll want to take a look at that PDF of the application so that you can make adjustments. So the 2 grant programs, the goal of the Opportunity Grant is to address immediate needs in the system. We understand that the early childhood system has been underfunded for many years, and the flexibility that this grant provides will help meet needs that have been outside of some of the traditional funding programs. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the Make Way for Kids grant and the Vermont After School Grant programs, and those were very targeted approaches. And these funds have the ability to address all kinds of problems within the early childhood system. Grants for opportunity category will range from $10,000 to $80,000, and we expect to fund 15 projects. The Innovation Grant, its goal is to develop system-wide solutions to some of the difficult problems that we're seeing within the system. These solutions often take multiple years to pilot to determine if they're successful. So there will definitely be the possibility of renewed funding for innovation grant recipients. These grants will range from $100,000 to $200,000. And our goal is to fund 4 projects this round. That's a slight change from the first round, where grants range from $150,000 to $200,000, and we funded 2 programs. If we really want to see some of these innovative approaches piloted, so we're expanding this program a bit. So federal funds come with a number of guidelines and restrictions. So it's important to be aware that there are a number of items that cannot be funded through this grant. This is just a really quick overview of some of the more common items, but there's a more comprehensive list, although it's not exhaustive, in the frequently asked questions document that's posted on the website. So things that can be funded, paying people, either staff salaries or consultant fees are allowable under this grant. You can buy supplies and materials. You can pay for training, education or professional development. And one of the nice things about the federal grant is that you can also include indirect costs. So you can include up to 10% of your direct costs as overhead for this grant. Things that cannot be funded. We cannot fund construction. And again, we understand that there is a need for capital in the early childhood system. And unfortunately, this grant can't be used for that. You also can't use it to pay off existing debt or to pay for activities that happen outside of the grant period. Fundraising of any kind is not allowable under this grant, and that includes contributions to fundraisers or capital campaigns or events that are fundraising events or staff time that's dedicated to fundraising. And you also can't include food, alcohol, or entertainment. So now I'm going to turn it over to Valerie Wood, Building Bright Futures Early Childhood Systems Evaluator, and she'll give you an overview of the review process.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. So what happens once you submit your application? Your application will go through a review process led by folks here at Building Bright Futures, but it's important to note that applications will be reviewed by teams that, in addition to BBF staff members, include community partners and other volunteers. And each team will evaluate applications based on a scoring rubric. And we provide some details here about what that rubric will look to evaluate. So how well the project fits with VECF goals, how clear and realistic the project is, how well equity is incorporated into the work, how realistic the budget is. And then for innovation grants, because they're broader in scope, just note that scoring will be include additional factors based on the extent to which the project addresses a persistent barrier or problem and the potential of the project to create systems change and be replicated. And as Michelle mentioned, the application's available as a PDF, so you can preview the questions and make sure that the information you're providing lines up with the details we're providing on the rubric here. When the review teams meet, we'll also be looking at the entire award pool to make sure that funding is distributed throughout the state to diverse projects. And I'm going to hand it back to Michelle to tell you a little bit more.
Thanks, Valerie. So I'm going to stop sharing my slide deck so that I can show you some things on our website. Just get up here. So in case you haven't been to our website before, there are a lot of resources that are available to you. And actually, I'm just going to ask, am I showing our website? Valerie, can you give me a thumbs up if it's okay? Great, good. And so you can, one of the things that's helpful is learning information about regional councils. If you aren't tied into your regional council yet, I highly recommend that you make that connection. There are tons of resources available through regional managers and regional councils. So you can scroll down on your page and, for example, let's say you're from Orange County, you can click on this and you'll see Courtney Hillhouse, who's our regional manager for Southeastern Vermont, Northern Windsor and Orange in the Springfield area, and her contact information is there. Courtney is a great resource. The other resource that you might want to take advantage of is our Early Childhood Data and Policy Center. There's a question on the application about what needs your project is trying to address. And so you can get great information related to data for your region of the state, as well as other indicators. It takes a few minutes to load up. But for example, childcare, I can click the childcare button here and find out how many families don't have access to early care and education in the state of Vermont. So just something for you to be aware of. And then back to our webpage. You can access the Vermont Early Childhood Fund page of our website a couple of ways. Right here in the header, there's a link to the website page, but also if you go into what we do and you scroll down, you'll find Vermont Early Childhood Fund. And then the page includes previews of the Opportunity Grant application, the Innovation Grant application, the budget template for both of the applications, the frequently asked questions document, which these are all questions that came from applicants in the first round of funding. So chances are, if you have a question, the answer is in this document. For example, one question that's asked by a lot of organizations is, can I apply for more than one grant? And the answer is in this document, but spoiler, no, we're asking that organizations limit themselves to just one application. And then it also includes the grant timeline and the portals to submit your application once you've pulled your materials together. So I'm going to go ahead and select the link. If you applied in the first round, this is a different link than what you would have used in the first round. So please be sure to use the one on the website. If you try to go back to the old portal, you'll get a message saying that the application is closed. And so I'm going to go ahead and enter. And when you get into the portal, if you're new and you haven't applied in the past, there's a place for you to fill out a profile about your organization. If you have applied in the past, this is the same profile that you put in back in the fall, and there's an opportunity for you to edit it and just double check, make sure all of your information is up to date. And then for the application itself, you'd come down here to this little square in the bottom. And you'll see that there are different segments for the application. So here's the Opportunity Grant application. Here's the project budget. And then we have a survey where we try to collect information about how the process went for you so that we can gather information and make improvements for the next round of applications. It's important to note that there is a submit application button here in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. So once you've completed each section, it'll show up as complete. Make sure you hit the submit application button, because otherwise I won't get your application. Since the Opportunity Grant application questions are available through the PDF, I did want to just take a few minutes to review the budget with everybody. So I'm going to click edit. And so the budget has also had some adjustments since the first round. The categories are slightly different to match with the categories that we will be using for grantees once they submit their reimbursements. So you have a couple of options with a budget. You can either upload your own budget by selecting the upload button here, or you can select here and use the budget template that we provide. And it provides an area for you to include the amount that you requested, as well as a detailed description. We really want to understand, how did you come up with these budget numbers? If you're saying that you're putting $25,000 dollars towards salaries for your staff. We want to understand how many staff members is that helping to fund, and how many hours a week are they working towards this project. There's a line for benefits. So if you'll be including benefits in your grant application, make sure to break the benefits out from the salaries. Professional and technical services, this is for contracted work. So if you are hiring somebody to do some training, if you're hiring somebody to come in and do consulting services as part of the project, they would go here. Property services, such as if you're renting a space to provide a special program, you would enter that information here. Other purchase services, for example, in the first round, we had a grantee who is contracting some transportation services for their program. That would go in here. Mileage, if any of your staff members are going to be traveling as part of the project, would go here. And then supplies, and this is equipment and materials under $5,000. It's consumable materials, things that cannot be capitalized. If you are purchasing something that would be an asset on your balance sheet, that's not a cost that would be allowed underneath this grant. But if you're purchasing consumable materials or anything that you would treat as a regular operating expense, that's something that you can ask for reimbursement for. So the amount that you request is the maximum amount that we will award. So make sure that you include things like benefits and overhead. And here's the line for overhead right here. Because once awards are made, we can't adjust the number upwards. And then to calculate, if you are going to request reimbursement of your indirect expenses or your overhead expenses, what you would do is take all of your direct expenses for the grant, add them up and multiply that by 10%. And it can't be any more than 10% of that amount. If you're filling out this application, you have other funding sources, then you'll want to only do 10% of the amount that you were requesting from Building Bright Futures. And then going back to the main section of the budget, so you can close out of this. The innovation application is only slightly different than this. There are a couple of extra application questions, and then a couple of areas for uploading your financial statements, as well as support letters for your project. So for support letters, you'd want to get letters of support from project partners, participants, or recipients of your services. And that's it. So we would love to open this up to questions from all of you. And I see that a few of you have already put some questions in the chat box. So I'm going to go ahead and read those and answer the questions I see here. So the first is, in reviewing the frequently asked questions document, I did not see reference to a fiscal sponsor relationship. Are programs projects with fiscal sponsors eligible to apply? In this case, a fiscal sponsor is a nonprofit. Yes, you definitely are able to apply if you have a fiscal sponsor, and that would show up actually in your profile section. So if you go into the profile section, one of the questions as you scroll down is, does your organization use a fiscal agent? You select yes, and then you fill in all the information about your fiscal agent here. So yes, we definitely allow fiscal agents for these projects. Jolene asks, is the $5,000 per equipment what is allowable for all equipment purchased, or does that mean that no piece of equipment may cost over $5,000? It's the second. It's that no piece of equipment should cost over $5,000. And really the distinction here isn't so much on the dollar amount, it's on whether or not your bookkeeper or your accountant would capitalize the purchase. So for example, if you are purchasing a changing table, yes, it's a piece of furnishings, but probably you're not going to capitalize that as an asset that you would depreciate over time because of the wear and tear on it. So that would be something that would be allowable. If it's something when you work with your bookkeeper that they would say, yeah, we need to add this to your balance sheet and depreciate it over time, then it's not an allowable expense. Oh, a lot of questions coming up in the chat. You can feel free to raise your hand too. I love to hear your lovely voices on such a beautiful day. Can the fiscal agent and the program with the fiscal agent both apply with separate applications, submitting 2 applications? Yes, you can. Just be aware that those should be 2 different projects. So we would not want to see an organization applying for a project, say to provide EMTSS training to your organization, and then have you apply for EMTSS training for your organization from that other organization. So we don't want to see duplications of an application. Is there a place where we can see detailed information on previous grants awarded so that we don't duplicate? Yes, definitely. So on the website, I'm going to share my screen again. So on the Vermont Early Childhood Fund page that I showed you earlier, all of the grant information for this round is up top. But if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see the grantees from the first round. This is the map of where they're located, what their projects are about, but then there's a paragraph explaining each of their programs here. That said, if your project is similar to some of the other work that's happening, that doesn't mean it won't be approved in this round. Because we understand that there are needs throughout the state. And so one group might be doing, so example here, let me find one. So GROW Prenatal and Family Center in Chittenden County is providing 3 types of support groups for families with children in the neonatal intensive care unit. This will only affect families who are in Chittenden County who are experiencing that. So if you live in another part of a state with a hospital that has a neonatal intensive care unit, which is a tongue twister, that would like to pilot something like this, then we certainly would look at that application because we understand that that need is statewide. Yeah, don't hold back from applying just because another organization is doing a similar project in another part of the state. Because we also would like to create cohorts. If you're working on a project that someone else is working on, we'd love to connect you so that you can learn from each other and take those learnings and improve the work that you're both doing. Can a grant be for statewide work? Yes, definitely. You'll find in the application that we ask questions about which county your work is going to be affecting. You can choose more than one county. We are really looking to find out specifically, like if there's one county that's really going to be getting the benefit of your work, that's really what we're looking for information. But if you have a grant that, you know, for example, Franklin and Grand Isle are very interconnected counties, and so it's hard to do work in one of those counties without doing work in the other county, and so we understand that you might choose 2 counties for that kind of work. Any other questions? Any brave souls willing to raise your hand and speak up and ask a question? No one's being brave today. You're all very quiet.
I have a question. I don't know how to raise my hand. There's like a specific way to do it on Zoom, but hi, I'm Erin. I'm representing Corey Hill Preschool, which is in Middlebury. One question that I had, is it a requirement that the program being funded increase the number of slots? And if not, if the program that we're trying to get funded doesn't, is that something that would kind of count against us or, you know, bump us out of the running for receiving funding?
Great questions. Great questions. So this grant is intended to strengthen the early childhood system broadly, right? And so we understand that that yes, adding slots is something that's really important in the state because there is such a shortage of childcare slots, but we also understand that there's other work that needs to be done within the childcare system to strengthen it, such as bringing salaries up to a livable wage and meeting the Vermont AUIC goals for what those numbers should be. We understand that a lot of programs, you know, operate on a shoestring. And so you may have materials that need to be replaced within your organization. So new childcare slots is not a requirement. You will notice that that is something that's asked in the application, and that's because we have to do tracking for the federal government on the results of this grant. And so we're looking for ways to collect data without having to scroll through paragraphs and narratives to get basic information. So don't let that discourage you. Please go ahead and apply. Casey.
Hi, so are we specifically talking about the opportunity grant right now, or are we touching on both?
We're touching on both. These are more opportunity grant type questions. The differentiation can get a little bit muddy. And I understand that, but opportunity grants really are meant to be one-time funding to deal with issues that are already existing, to just address those problems. Innovation grants really are meant to be like big system-wide change.
Okay, I just wanted to know because I'll wait for the next question for like if we talk about innovation. But so for the opportunity grant, we have 8 different campuses under one name, but like they're different license numbers. So I can apply for multiple campuses as long as it's not the same type of project.
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions coming up?
Michelle, can we go back to the regional question?
Sure.
So the last time we were working with a group of programs in Chittenden County, and since then there are some programs both in the Montpelier area and down in southern Vermont that would be interested in doing the same kind of work with us. So how would that look, and how would that look in terms of the application?
So you'd want to choose one like umbrella organization that would apply for the project. It gets really complicated on the reimbursement basis with that. If you're applying for multiple organizations, really what you would have to do is like contract out with the other organizations to accomplish the work. And the documentation for that would have to be pretty rigorous in order for us to be able to reimburse you.
So it's separate from the budgetary complications. This would all be under the, under that umbrella of Rivet. So it would be under one organization, but it would be across several counties. Does that make it simpler? Oh,
yeah. Yeah, and you would just indicate that in the application. You explain that Rivet is working within multiple counties to provide the project, and you'd indicate on the application which counties you were working in.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Can I ask one more question?
Of course you can.
It was really helpful to have you point out some of the differences between the last application and this application. Are there any others that you want to bring our attention to?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the changes that came specifically from input that we received from applicants was the opportunity to include additional information. So we asked some pretty targeted questions in the application, and several applicants said, well, I want to include some more information so that you understand more about my project. And so there is a question right at the bottom of the application that says, is there anything else you'd like to share with the review committee as we look into your application? We also really wanted applicants to understand the importance of making projects and programs equitable and increasing access across socioeconomic backgrounds, across racial backgrounds, because that's a big part of this preschool development grant. And so that's incorporated more into the questions this time than it was last time. So as opposed to just asking, what's your organization's equity statement, we're really getting at the heart of that with some of the questions. So you'll want to consider that as you resubmit, how you might further elaborate on those issues in your application.
That's
Sure. Any other questions? Feel free to just come off of mute and ask, or raise your hand, whatever works best for you. Hi, Elaine, go ahead. Oops, you're still muted, Elaine. Here, let's see. I can try to ask you to unmute. No, that doesn't work. There in your little box on the screen in the upper right-hand corner, if you hover your cursor, there will be a blue box with 3 dots that pops up. If you click on that, you should be able to unmute there. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
No worries.
I'm still a little bit new to the work around the early childhood education minimum compensation standards.
Mhm.
And I'm interested in learning a little bit more about how centers that are using that, how that's impacting the whole funding around Vermont Early Childhood Funds, and how a new center can learn about how that's being used across the state.
Yeah. Beth, can I hand that one off to you?
Elaine, can you say a little bit more about, is that a grant application that you are looking to develop to research and to provide some guidance?
No, I'm interested in how, this is a new center that I'm involved with, and so we're really taking a hard look at the whole wages and compensation issue and trying to find out how those kind of standards are being used across the state in terms of thinking of ourselves as an organization that wants to be competitive and attract high quality staff. How do we access that information? And then in terms of our grant applications, how is Vermont Early Childhood Fund looking at the whole issue of salaries in terms of the applications? Because I know that was a concern with our application last time, that they were too low.
Yeah, so Elena, it sounds like you're looking for some information to build a stronger application. And I would recommend that if you are not yet connected to First Children's Finance, I feel like they are probably the best resource to help you navigate some of the changes in compensation practices, use of childcare financial assistance, building budgets, those types of things.
We are connected, and it's going to happen later today, so that's good.
Perfect. Great. Ask the question there. Fabulous team. And then I think that, and then I would take that information to account for how you build the budget for your VECF application. And I think demonstrating that you are kind of accessing other resources, trying to build a educated budget, being able to describe that process will be helpful to us.
Okay. Thank you.
Casey, go ahead.
Hi, so I'm going to go back to my question I was going to ask you. It's more innovation grant because that's just more funding. So would the same guidelines be like the $5,000 for equipment? Because I saw that another center had done like was awarded for like transportation grant. Like, did they purchase a van or something, or Because that would obviously be more than like $5,000.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I have a
that,
question.
that grant was to a child care center that already had a van, and they were hiring somebody to work to drive the van.
Okay,
and
because
so
we have a
the-
transportation company too, like aside from the school, we just do state contracts and we transport to and from for the like DCF. But we wanted to do it for our children, so we just didn't know if like how that worked, but thank you for clarifying.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, and again, I would remind you all that this is really short-term funding, right? We would love for this funding to go in perpetuity and really to help you all beef up your programs and do some wonderful creative projects that serve children and families in Vermont. But any project that you apply for, you need to be considering long-term, right? If you're going to be bringing staff on, then be considering now what your plan is to keep those staff members on once this grant funding goes away. So just be aware of that. Do we have any last questions before we close? Elaine, I see that your mute button is off. Do you have another question?
No,
Okay.
sorry.
No worries. No worries. Great. Well, I do want to remind you all that we have question and answer sessions coming up. One is, let's see, I forget the dates already on this. I think one is February 28th. Yes, we have two on February 28th, one at 1 o'clock and one at 6 o'clock, and two on March 14th, one at 1 o'clock and one at 6 o'clock. And those are great opportunities for you, once you've had a chance to look at the application, to come back and say, oh, I really don't understand this part, or, you know, could you help me think about this? So yes, and we are a resource for you, so please don't hesitate to reach out. Super. Well, have a wonderful day, everybody. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.